Hello and welcome to today's episode. First, the very big news, the most important news, but small, just obvious news. Bakhmut has fallen. Russia's PMC Wagner announced they have captured Bakhmut, and soon they will transfer that to the Russian military, and I think they have already. So now it's hard to spin and shape propaganda narrative. Russia is undeniably winning this war. Of course, Ukraine tried to divert attention by attacking Russia's Belgorod Republic, and for a little while they were successful at diverting attention. And the news media, which is most of which is controlled by the Western companies, they just said this is an invasion into Russia, Ukraine is winning, and all that. Russia was caught by surprise, and the Ukrainians have invaded. All that nonsense. Turns out it was just a few people. It was just a nuisance, and that probably will be Ukrainian strategy going forward. It's obvious that they cannot win in a standard war against Russia. It was obvious before the beginning of the invasions, the special military operation, but it's still the same, and they cannot just spin it. Ukraine is winning, and I think Ukraine will now try asymmetric warfare. What is asymmetric warfare? Well, terrorist attacks basically, but also non-traditional attacks, non-traditional warfare. So they'll try to drone strike the Kremlin. They'll cause trouble in Belgorod, and maybe they will do some cyber attacks. Maybe they will intercept some Russian cargo ship or something like that. Asymmetric warfare, basically what Pakistan does to India. That's what they will try to do, Ukrainians. And Pakistanis are their friends, so Pakistanis are in good position to guide them in that warfare. But I don't think it will work for long, because Russia will respond at some point and just take over Ukraine. It's the outcome of this war is obvious. Ukraine will be under Russian control. It will be stupid of Russia to give up any Ukrainian territory to Poland or NATO or anything like that. It will be stupid. They have to go all the way to Poland right now. The things have escalated so far, and just it's at this point Ukrainian neutrality is impossible. So Russia will either annex entirety of Ukraine into Russia, or it will turn some parts of Ukraine into autonomous state like Chechnya. I have said this from very early. I think I said it last year also, that Ukraine will be under Russian control in some way or another. Think of it like this: there are many Russian cities, historically Russian cities, which are still under Ukrainian control. Odessa is one. Kharkov or Kharkiv is another. Kiev is another. Yes, Kiev, the Ukrainian capital. It was like the beginning of Russia's civilization. They were called Kievan Rus. So Kiev, I don't know what happens to Kiev, but I think Russia will annex further Ukrainian territories, and I think they will reach to the borders of Poland. That one is obvious. If they don't reach to the borders of Poland, NATO basically gains territory, and Russia has drawn a red line when it comes to Ukraine being part of NATO. And I don't think any side is willing to back down at this point. I think it will take some time for West to enter Ukraine and forcibly annex or make Ukraine part of NATO by confronting Russia or whatever. But Russian soldiers are ready right now. They're just waiting for the Ukrainian counteroffensive. But I think they will reach to the borders of Poland. It logistically, it's much easier for Russians to reach borders of Poland than for NATO or Poland to enter and get Ukrainian territory. So that's what happened. Bakhmut has fallen, and I think they will move on to China now. Here's the story. There was a G7 meeting in Hiroshima recently. They released a statement that basically revealed their new target, China. This is after they failed to regime change and collapse and balkanize and exploit Russia. That was their plan. Cause a regime change and in the future balkanize Russia into multiple smaller nations which they can exploit later on. That hasn't happened, and now they're going against a much bigger target, that is China. I don't know why they're doing it. They don't have any plans. They just want to make themselves look good or what. I don't know why they're doing it. They're just shooting themselves in the foot, not just shooting Russians and Chinese. The statement is called G7 Hiroshima Leaders Communique. Here's an excerpt. Point 51 and 52. 51. We stand together as G7 partners on the following elements which underpin our respective relations with China. We stand prepared to build constructive and stable relations with China, recognizing the importance of engaging candidly with and expressing our concerns directly to China. We act in our national interest. It is necessary to cooperate with China, given its role in the international community and the size of its economy, on global challenges as well as areas of common interest. We call on China to engage with us, including in international fora, on areas such as climate change and biodiversity crisis, and the conservation of natural resources in the framework of Paris and Kunming-Montreal agreements, addressing vulnerable countries' debt sustainability and financing needs, global health and macroeconomic stability. Our policy approaches are not designed to harm China, nor do we seek to thwart China's economic progress and development. A growing China that plays by international rules would be of global interest. We are not decoupling or turning inwards. At the same time, we recognize that economic resilience requires de-risking and diversifying. We'll take steps individually and collectively to invest in our own economic vibrancy. We'll reduce excessive dependencies in our critical supply chains. With a view to enabling sustainable economic relations with China and strengthening the international trading system, we'll push for a level playing field for our workers and companies. We'll seek to address the challenges posed by China's non-market policies and practices, which distort the global economy. We will counter malign practices such as illegitimate technology transfer or data disclosure. We'll foster resilience to economic coercion. We also recognize the necessity of protecting certain advanced technologies that could be used to threaten our national security without unduly limiting trade and investment. We remain seriously concerned about the situation in the East and South China Seas. We strongly oppose any unilateral attempts to change the status quo by force or coercion. We reaffirm the importance of peace and stability across the Taiwan Strait as indispensable to security and prosperity in the international community. There is no change in the basic positions of the G7 members on Taiwan, including stated One China policies. We call for a peaceful resolution of cross-strait issues. We'll keep voicing our concerns about the human rights situation in China, including in Tibet and Xinjiang, where forced labor is of major concern to us. We call on China to honor its commitments under the Sino-British Joint Declaration and Basic Law, which enshrine rights, freedoms, and a high degree of autonomy for Hong Kong. We call on China to act in accordance with its obligations under the Vienna Convention on Diplomatic Relations and the Vienna Convention on Consular Relations, and not to conduct interference activities aimed at undermining the security and safety of our communities, the integrity of our democratic institutions, and our economic prosperity. We call on China to press Russia to stop its military aggression and immediately, completely, and unconditionally withdraw its troops from Ukraine. We encourage China to support a comprehensive, just, and lasting peace based on territorial integrity and the principles and purposes of the UN Charter, including through its direct dialogue with Ukraine. Point number 52. There is no legal basis for China's expansive maritime claims in the South China Sea, and we oppose China's militarization activities in the region. We emphasize the universal and unified characters of the UNCLOS and reaffirm UNCLOS's important role in setting out the legal framework that governs all activities in the oceans and the seas. We reiterate the award rendered by the Arbitral Tribunal on July 12, 2016 is a significant milestone which is legally binding upon the parties to those proceedings and a useful basis for peacefully resolving disputes between the parties. So they basically want to contain China. This is just basically submit to every single demand of ours. Think about this, right? Let's start with 51. Point number 51. We stand prepared to build constructive and stable relations with China. Okay? Recognizing the importance of engaging candidly with and expressing our concerns directly to China. Well, the G7, particularly the United States, have acted just so terribly in terms of diplomatic and foreign relations and all the dialogues and all that. When it comes to Russia and Ukraine war, that people on the internet, other influencers who cover geopolitics, are saying that the Chinese aren't even talking to United States. Chinese government is not talking to United States government. They're not picking up Biden's phone. They're ignoring Biden completely. They just don't care at this point. That's what I've heard. So the first part of 51 is, we call on China to engage with us, including international fora on areas such as climate and biodiversity. Same thing again, just like what I said. Chinese are not interested in engaging with United States, considering how irrational the Biden administration has been when it comes to Ukraine conflict. Our policy approaches are not designed to harm China, nor do we seek to thwart China's economic progress and development. That's just a lie. A growing China that plays by international rules would be of global interest. When they say international rules, they just mean Western and American subservience, I guess I can say. Just basically submit themselves to America. We are not decoupling or turning inwards. At the same time, we recognize that economic resilience requires de-risking and diversifying. That's what decoupling means. What they're doing basically is taking out manufacturing slowly away and out of China, while trying to keep access to the Chinese market. So they want to make money from China. They want to continue making money from China, but they don't want to invest in China. They don't want to manufacture in China, basically. That's what de-risking means. Complete decoupling is basically not trading at all. That's that's the difference. De-risking is basically we'll take out our investments, we'll take out all the manufacturing and all our supply chains out of China, but we still want market access to Chinese consumers. With a view to enabling sustainable economic relations with China and strengthening international trading system, we will push for a level playing field for our workers and companies. We will seek to address the challenges posed by China's non-market policies and practices which distort the global economy. We will counter malign practices such as illegitimate technology transfer and data disclosure. Well, some of that is legitimate technology transfer, which basically if they want to do business in China, they have to give up their technologies. But also, China doesn't have intellectual property laws. Of course, you are going to call it illegitimate, but in Chinese domestic economy, according to Chinese laws, that's totally legitimate. Okay, and I think they should have sorted this mess out in the 90s when they started shipping all their factories to China. They should have asked for technology transfers, just direct technology transfers, but also strong intellectual property laws. And by the way, this is what Obama, the former President Obama, was trying to do with TPP, the Trans-Pacific Partnership. Basically, they'll get all these countries, many of the Asian countries, USA, I think UK, and maybe few European countries, Japan, and Southeast Asian countries, like Southeast Asian countries that are to the north of Australia and to the southeast of China, and basically force China to come to a negotiating table and set up international framework of sorts, an international trading agreement of sorts, where if China wishes to join, they'll have to abide by intellectual property laws. Basically, kind of like EU, European Union, but for Pacific region. That was TPP. But when former President Donald Trump came in, he cancelled out TPP. The next point. We remain seriously concerned about the situation in the East and South China Seas. Of course you are. Everyone is. Because of the supply chain in East Asia. By East Asia I mean China, Japan, Taiwan, South Korea, basically. The big giants. Everyone is concerned because most of global semiconductor manufacturing comes from East Asia, particularly Taiwan and South Korea, TSMC and Samsung. And if a war happens, you can almost say goodbye to proper supply chains in around the world. You can almost say goodbye for a few years to proper semiconductor supply. Semiconductors will be in short supply, which means massive inflation in everything that's electronic, because semiconductors are part of all electronic stuff, everything that we use, everything that industries use, not just consumers, industries, all the factories, all the special equipment they use also use semiconductors. Also, all the military stuff, they also need semiconductors. So if anything happens there, kiss goodbye to all the technology at a cheap price at least. Technology is not lost forever. Of course, existing technology will still exist for few years, and but that will cause massive inflation. We reaffirm the importance of peace and stability across Taiwan Strait. Um, I don't understand why they bothered with one China policy. When they recognize the Taiwanese government as the sole government of China, international community recognized. They didn't recognize communist China, and in the 1970s they basically went, communist China is the real China and Taiwanese government is illegitimate. That's basically the one China policy. But many countries have unofficially kept embassies open for Taiwan. I think when they recognize communist China as one China, they should have declared Taiwan's independence and settled that matter once and for all right there. I don't know why. That was a massive screw up by the West, by the United States in the 1970s. Next point. We'll keep voicing our concerns about human rights situation in China, including in Tibet and Xinjiang. That's true. But what are you going to do about it? What are you going to do about it? To the west of Xinjiang is Central Asia. Central Asia is completely under Russian and Chinese sphere of influence, and Western powers don't even have access to Central Asia, direct land access to Central Asia. For that, they'll need Armenia, which is to the south of Georgia, which is to the south of Russia. Armenia and Azerbaijan. Armenia, Azerbaijan and Georgia, the Caucasus region, which is to the east of Turkey but to the south of Russia, in the Black Sea region. That's near, and they don't have, American military doesn't even have access to the Central Asia directly, just like they have to the entire world. Central Asia is firmly under Russian and Chinese sphere of influence. So what are you going to do about Xinjiang situation? Tibet, same thing. Best they can do is Pakistan. And Afghanistan, but Afghanistan is lost. So what can they do? Asymmetric warfare. They could have waged asymmetric warfare via Tibetan and Xinjiang independence movements and all that. But even if they declare independence, what are they going to do? This is the next part of the same point. We call on China to honor its commitments under the Sino-British Joint Declaration and Basic Law, which enshrine rights, freedoms and a high degree of autonomy for Hong Kong. Same thing. If you want to invest in Asia and all that, just choose Singapore at this point. Don't even bother for Hong Kong, unless you are getting some special deal or something, or you have already invested in Hong Kong. Just don't bother. Choose Singapore. Singapore is. This is not financial advice, but from what I've read, I'm not a financial expert, but from what I've read, Singapore is a neutral, kind of neutral. Even at this point, Singapore is more neutral than Switzerland, considering Switzerland chose to sanction Russia and they destroyed the neutrality which lasted for centuries. Imagine you're Swiss, right? You were neutral during the Second World War against the Nazis, but you choose to sanction Russia, like over Ukraine. So anyway, I think there is a trend where UAE, Dubai, and Singapore are starting to replace Switzerland as like two neutral investment destinations, because they were neutral on Russian sanctions, all that. So there's that. Next point. We call on China to act in accordance with its obligations under Vienna Convention on diplomatic relations and consular relations, and not to conduct interference activities aimed at undermining security and safety of our communities, the integrity of our democratic institutions, and our economic prosperity. Huh? Is CIA Chinese? Is George Soros Chinese? What are you talking about? The Chinese are interfering in Hollywood and in the education system, but in elections in Western countries, no. They're interfering in the third world countries, basically bribing and corruption. But in those countries, bribing and corruption are standard practices. So even if the Chinese were doing it, someone else would have to do it. In India, they probably interfere. But what does that have to do with G7? I don't think the Chinese are interfering in G7. That's I don't see how. At least in democracy, they are not George Soros, or they are not CIA, or they're not trying to start color revolutions. We call on China to press Russia to stop its military aggression and immediately, completely and unconditionally withdraw its troops from Ukraine. Huh? Well, okay, the Russians have escalated in Ukraine, but they were provoked. Don't pretend like Ukraine wanted to be part of NATO and you were just neutral and Ukraine came begging to you. You provoked Russia. You installed a new government in Ukraine and provoked Russia, but you want Russia to be stopped from the Chinese. How does that make sense? There's no legal basis for China's expansive maritime claims in the South China Sea, and we oppose China's militarization activities in the region. I don't know under what treaties China does not have a claim in the South China Sea. I don't know what. I just don't know. Please, again, I don't want to defend China. Come on, I don't want to defend China, but you're being unreasonable here. I don't want to defend China, but clearly, even I can see, like, China has more of a maritime claim in the South China Sea than United States, which have militarily encircled China via Japan, South Korea, Taiwan, Philippines, etc. And maybe I think even Vietnam too. I don't want to defend China, but this is just. Speaking of G7, by the way, Prime Minister Modi has had major symbolic and diplomatic wins recently. India was a guest in the G7 summit this year, and PM Modi met President Zelensky of Ukraine on the sidelines of G7. Here's a short summary from an article in CNN, on a CNN website. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky met with Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi on the sidelines of the Group of Seven summit, G7 summit, in Japan Saturday, the first in-person meeting between the two since Russia's invasion began. Modi, who has so far refused to condemn the invasion, said India would do everything we can to help end the war. The war in Ukraine is a big issue for the whole world, he said. It has also had many effects on the whole world, but I don't consider it to be just an issue of economy or politics. For me, it is an issue of humanity. For his part, Zelensky invited Modi to join Ukraine's peace efforts to bring the war against Russia to an end. After G7, PM Modi was welcomed by PM of Papua New Guinea, James Marape. PM Marape bent down to touch PM Modi's feet. This went viral, especially in India. PM Modi met leaders of 14 Pacific Island nations at the Forum for India Pacific Islands Cooperation Summit. PM Modi was given the highest civilian award of Papua New Guinea, the Grand Companion of the Order of Logohu. He was also given the highest civilian award of Fiji, Companion of the Order of Fiji. PM Christ Hipkins of New Zealand came to meet PM Modi on the sidelines of the Forum for India Pacific Islands Cooperation Summit. PM Modi then met PM Anthony Albanese of Australia. In the Sydney Stadium, PM Modi was welcomed by around 20,000 cheering fans. PM Albanese called PM Modi boss at that event. So, PM Modi had many wins internationally, at least symbolic wins and diplomatic wins. But Indians must remember there are no permanent friends or enemies in geopolitics. So while these are nice gestures, we should have our national interests above everything else in our minds. The next story. Donald Trump's relationship with Russia. The true nature of investigation of former POTUS, Trump's relationship with Russia, was revealed recently. It's called the Durham Report. Here's an excerpt from the Daily Wire. Special Counsel John Durham, who was tasked by the former Attorney General Bill Barr to examine the propriety of the FBI's investigation of President Trump, released a 320-page report on Monday that found the FBI had no evidence to support Trump-Russia scandal when it began its investigation, and found sobering differences in how it approached the Trump probe compared to other politically sensitive investigations. Basically, they had no evidence or link that justified the investigation of Trump, but they investigated him anyway. A lot of people are shocked and outraged by this. But no one is pointing fingers towards Trump for this. Let me explain. Remember, Trump's campaign slogans were "drain the swamp," "lock her up," etc. Basically, Trump was calling for a purge, whether he realized this or not. Disclaimer, I'm not calling for a purge. I'm a neutral party here. It doesn't really affect me as I'm not a US citizen. Just putting it out there. But let me explain. Trump was calling for a purge of the more internationalist pro-war factions of US establishment by saying he will drain the swamp. So of course, the swamp attacked him back. Compare this to two most famous purges in history. Both happened in 1930s. Hitler staged a false flag attack on the Reichstag, which set Reichstag on fire, in which Hitler blamed on communists. He then purged most of his opposition in what is called the Night of the Long Knives. Stalin of the Soviet Union exploited the murder of Sergei Kirov to purge the internationalist factions of the Bolsheviks. Trump called for a purge openly by saying he'll drain the swamp. How do you drain the swamp? First, you can fire them, or you'll arrest them and put them in prison, or you'll execute them. Just three ways you can, drain the swamp. He was calling for draining the swamp. He basically was calling for a purge, he and his supporters. No wonder the American establishment persecuted him politically and culturally. No wonder the American establishment is trying to label his movement as white supremacists, extremists and terrorists. Terrorists. Again, I'm neutral here. I'm just saying, if you want to drain the swamp, don't just start chanting "drain the swamp." That's just stupid. Next, Turkish elections. Turkish elections are headed to second round after all the candidates failed to secure a majority. Like I said in my last episode, Turkey is important because of its geography. Despite high levels of inflation and massive earthquake, incumbent President Erdogan won the elections. And a massive crowd came out cheering for President Erdogan because they want more inflation, I guess. Of course, Western governments do not like Erdogan. Western media openly said they want Erdogan gone. Of course, President Erdogan, used those Western media publications as propaganda. See, they want me gone because they want Turkey to be subservient to the West. They don't want Turkey to be more powerful and all that. But they shouldn't have just called for it. That's just stupid. Like how stupid do you have to be? It's like, Trump saying drain the swamp. That's what Western media was saying. Erdogan must go. What are you doing? So anyway, Turkey's foreign policy will remain the same. It will continue to bother NATO, but they have no choice because of Turkey's geography. Turkey is the only country that is preventing Russia from expanding into the Mediterranean Sea between Europe and Africa. Mediterranean Sea and the Balkans, basically Serbia and former Yugoslav countries. That Russia is stopped by Turkey, and Russian expansion, naval expansion, is stopped by Turkey, and Turkey will be the gateway for Western powers to enter Central Asia eventually, if they convince Armenia and Azerbaijan as well. Azerbaijan, maybe Azerbaijan will be convinced because it is a lot closer to Turkey. They're basically Turks. They're Muslims. They're going to be together. They're going to have good relations unless something major terrible happens there. As for Armenia, many of the Western politicians have tried to woo Armenia to join the Western Bloc against Russia. Again, Armenia has no choice but to be with Russia because of its geographical location, and Armenians, I guess they are smarter than Ukraine. Armenians, there's a huge Armenian diaspora in United States, but I think at this point Armenia is staying with Russia, whether Armenia likes it or not. But next point, Turkey. Turkey also needs the West to deter potential Russian aggression. Right? It's not just that the Western governments need Turkey. Turkey also needs the West. They need each other. Without Western or NATO support, Russia would have just, at this point, just completely annexed Turkey, or even they might have even turned Turkey into a communist bloc, and maybe they would have corrupted Turkey. And President Erdogan knows this. President Erdogan knows the importance of Turkey's geography and Turkey's importance in geopolitics, and he is using that fully to his advantage. And I don't know, they've trying some weird "we'll resurrect the Ottoman Empire" stuff. You're not going to have a Turkey. Listen to me, Turkish people. You're not going to have a caliphate as long as you're not in control of Makkah and Medina. It's up to the Saudis if there should be a new caliphate or not, or at least anyone who controls Makkah and Medina. And Turkish people, they don't control Makkah and Medina, so you don't have a chance. I'm just saying. If you want some to create a new Ottoman Empire or whatever. I'm just saying, you don't have Saudi Arabia under your sphere of influence. You don't have Makkah and Medina under your control, basically. US to offer India NATO Plus membership. NATO Plus is basically Japan, Israel, Australia, all the countries that are, part of the Western Bloc, but are not in the North Atlantic. India should, considering the autonomy Japan, Israel and Australia have, I think India will most likely reject NATO Plus membership. Most likely, unless they offer India something really, really good. It depends on the terms and conditions. But I think India will most likely will want to pursue an independent foreign policy, not just become an ally or vassal of United States, but a partner and a major power. India has those ambitions, and India will not become a major power under NATO. That's clear. They'll be on a global stage faster. They'll reach just global stage faster in media, like Israel is or like Japan is. But we are already doing that. So I don't think India should bother with NATO Plus. But again, depends on what are the terms and conditions that US is offering India. But it's highly unlikely that India will join NATO Plus. Iran and Afghanistan border skirmishes. So there is a border skirmish between Iran and Afghanistan. Afghanistan has a dam, and they are not allowing enough water into Iran. So this could escalate into a first water war. Afghanistan has left a lot of there are a lot of American weapons left in Afghanistan. When the Americans left Afghanistan, they just didn't bother to take out weapons for whatever reason. Not just like a few weapons, but $85 billion worth of weapons. So that's almost India's or Saudi Arabia's or Russia's budget. Russia probably has higher, I think, but that's bigger than India's or Saudi Arabia's budget, and almost bigger than Russia's budget before the start of the Ukraine crisis. And Iran and Afghanistan are fighting over water. Other potential hotspots for war over water, I think Ethiopia and Egypt and Sudan. I think that area has issues with water. I think it's Egypt and Ethiopia, if I remember correctly. Another problem with another potential hotspot for a war over water is India, Pakistan or India, China. There are many rivers that come from China to India. There are many rivers that come to Pakistan via India. And if one party decides to turn off the water, it could lead to conflict. And these are really terrible conflicts. That's one of the reasons why India has reached out diplomatically to Israel so much in recent years, because Israel has mastered, Israel is really good at water purification, like turning salt water into drinkable water. I don't remember the exact phrase. Groundwater harvesting or something. I don't remember. They're really good at turning salt water into regular drinkable, usable water, and India needs that. That's one of the reasons why India is reaching out to Israel. So last story is technology based. Google and Microsoft AI innovations. Google and Microsoft made a lot of AI announcements recently. Let's start with Google. Google announced AI innovations and hardware in Google I/O, Google's annual conference. Bard, which is Google's answer to ChatGPT, is now available to everyone in 180 countries. ChatGPT is a subscription, I think. Bard is free, just like Bing Chat, Microsoft's Bing Chat. almost everyone has a Google account. If you don't have a Google account, maybe you're using every possible Google alternative. Kudos to you, sir, ma'am, whoever you are. If you're using iPhone, if you're using Microsoft apps, if you're using Apple Maps, if you're not on YouTube or you're using TikTok primarily, kudos to you. But everyone else who has a Google account, you can just use Bard. Google search is getting AI snapshots, where you'll start seeing AI powered answers at the top of search results that will provide context to your search. Android will get an ability to create a wallpaper based on your prompts. So basically you just have to type in what kind of image you want in the text box. It will create a wallpaper for you. Other companies already have this. DALL-E, I think OpenAI's, the ChatGPT company, also has something called DALL-E, DALL-E. There's also Midjourney, Stable Diffusion. I think these are other two. I think Adobe has Adobe Firefly, if I remember correctly. Android will get an ability to create a wallpaper based on your prompts. Just type in what you want as an image. It will create an image and you can set it as wallpaper. Google Messages will get Magic Compose, which will use AI to help you reply to messages and adjust the tone of your messages. It will help you with messaging. AI. Simple. Google Photos will get a magic editor, which will let you adjust lighting, move the subject, get rid of objects in foreground and background in your photos. Now, I really like Google Photos. It's a shame that Microsoft doesn't have a competitor to Google Photos, because I primarily use Microsoft for backups and Microsoft 365. And people who use Google Photos, people who use Google for backups, I'm insanely jealous of because of Google Photos. I really like Google Photos. I have on my phone, but I wish there was a Microsoft solution that will let me see photos on my phone as well as on my cloud backups. Google Photos does that. If you're backing up to Google Photos or Google Drive, if you're backing up your photos to Google Photos or Google Drive, you can see your photos on your phone and your Google account. And all these nicer editing features that are available in Google Photos. So anyway, Google Photos will get Magic Editor, which will let you adjust lighting, move the subject without any like shenanigans, without trying to take photo again. Get rid of objects in foreground and your background in your photos. Finally, Google announced Duet AI for Google Workspace. This is similar to Microsoft 365 Copilot, which was announced few weeks ago, or if not months ago. Gmail will get writing assistants to help you write emails. Google Docs will get writing assistants and proofreading. Google Sheets will get organizing and classification features. Google Slides will get ability to generate images from text. Kind of like the Android wallpaper thing, but for presentations. Google Slides. Now to Microsoft. Microsoft also had its annual conference recently called Microsoft Build. Bing Chat will get plugins that are interoperable with OpenAI's ChatGPT. ChatGPT announced plugins. Bing Chat will also get those plugins, and Bing Chat plugins will also be into ChatGPT. Bing will now be the default search engine for OpenAI's ChatGPT. So basically, there will be no difference between Bing Chat and ChatGPT at this point. Yeah, you have similar plugins, you have similar training database, you have similar training models, and you have similar search engine. What's the difference? People who don't want to use Bing can just use ChatGPT. Monthly subscription, with a monthly subscription. Microsoft 365 Copilot will be available in Microsoft Edge. Everything is available in Microsoft Edge at this point. I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised if they had just Windows in Microsoft Edge. If they had Xbox in Microsoft Edge. Microsoft Store will get AI generated review summaries for apps. Windows Terminal will get AI features via GitHub Copilot. Basically, what Google Docs is getting with writing assistants, or what Microsoft 365 has, Microsoft Copilot, Microsoft 365 has with Microsoft 365 Copilot, but for programmers, basically. GitHub Copilot on Windows Terminal. Windows 11 will also get a Copilot that will help you summarize content that you're viewing in apps, rewrite it or explain it. It will also help you adjust Windows settings by just typing your command. It will be on your taskbar. So the game is on between big tech companies to deploy AI into as many products as possible. Apple is looking into it. I think Meta has already open sourced their AI, and I think they have already surpassed OpenAI and Google just by open sourcing their data models, which was supposed to be OpenAI's original mission. That's why it was called OpenAI. But because of their ability to create content, artists are nervous about these AI models. Writers and digital artists are especially concerned about their intellectual property, as these AI models are trained on existing content. But whether they like it or not, AI is here to stay, just like cloud computing. It's not going to be the next NFT or next cryptocurrency. It's here to stay. AI is here to stay. Anyway, thank you so much for tuning in. Just share my content, give me feedback and share my content. And I'll see you guys very, very soon.